Welcome to Happy Talks with Dr. Alice and Donovan. Dr. Alice Fong is a holistic naturopathic doctor and founder of Amor de Soi Wellness. And Donovan Jensen is a software engineer and founder of HowToHappy.com. Together, they're out to cause more happiness in the world.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Happy Talks. My name is Dr. Alice, and this is my awesome co-host, Donovan. And today we have a special guest. Clisver Alvarez is a mental health coach, CPRS, and writer for the Blue Grace Lifestyle. Please welcome Clisver. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure to be here today, and I'm super excited to just be here. Thank you.
Yeah, we're excited to have you here and talk about identity crisis and just learn a little more about you and your story. So why don't you kick us off and tell us a little about like what led you to becoming a mental health coach?
Ooh. Well, I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder at the age of 16, and this actually was really tough, because I was going through puberty, I was going through teenage years, high school, just everything, you could think of. And I get diagnosed with mental health diagnosis, which was at the time wasn't as, I guess, as accepted as it is now, or it's becoming more. And when that happened, I was put on medication. And it was really tough going through the medication, the stigma behind it, school, growing up, and just everything in general, So that eventually led me to move from New Jersey to Tennessee. And I went through so many struggles that I actually decided, why not help other people go through the same situations that I've gone through, because I've overcame them myself. And I decided, what, I can help other people with these things and not have them go through the same situations that I went through.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense for how you sort of ended up there. I would be curious to just, dig in on that a little bit more and hear about either some inflection points on that journey, like places where you feel like you learned a lot that you could share with other people, or, just some of the general like tactics or themes that you sort of work with people on.
Well, I think that going through these situations, I think the big thing for me was accepting it, accepting that I had a mental health diagnosis, because without you accepting it, it's rough. A lot of people come to me and they want help for their family member or their friend or whatever. And if the person doesn't accept it, it's just, I can't help them. You have to want the help. You have to need the actual help to actually get it, so that's one of the main things. So yeah, that was huge.
Yeah, well, I'm glad that you were able to get the help that you needed. I'm curious, when you got the diagnosis, and I can't fully understand what it must be like to struggle with something as difficult as bipolar. From what I hear, it sounds like a very challenging mental illness to deal with. How did that kind of help, or how did that shape your identity in a way? And what did you do to kind of come to acceptance with it?
I think that for me, it shaped my identity because for a while, I actually think that the identity behind it was that I victimized myself behind the bipolar disorder a lot, and it crippled me for a while, because I thought that what people were saying out there, like friends or family members, the people closest to me kind of bothered me more. But also strangers, I remember going to a class and I had to hand in a doctor's note, and I did it in front of the class. And just a simple doctor's note that I read bipolar disorder. And when that happened, a random person just said, "Oh, you guys are crazy." And things like that really just didn't help my identity, because I ended up becoming very negative towards myself, becoming very depressed. So that shaped my identity for a while, teachers in school, for example, they saw the side of me that was the sleepy kid, always in school and falling asleep in class, and because they didn't see that I was on medication. So that didn't really help either. At first, it was a little bit like, you know what, I'm just going to sit here and take it and just be that person for a while. Mm. But then I decided, you know what, most of it was when a teacher actually saw that I was actually talented in English. Mm-hmm. So she saw that I was really good in English, and she was like, you know what, she gave me a journal, and she was like, you should actually journal your feelings away. So that kind of grew, and she saw how I would write, and she ended up giving me a whole bunch of things to draw as well. So, and I was being homeschooled at the time. So from there, I ended up falling in love with writing. Mm. And eventually I actually decided, you know what, I want to start a blog. And not just any blog. I was like, you know what, I want to make a safe space for these people that felt the way I felt when I was being bullied, when I was being judged or being criticized or whatever, for the way I felt. And for being bipolar, for having a bipolar disorder illness, I ended up creating this blog. And at first it didn't really work out. You know, no one really kind of went on it, or no one really did anything with it. But I didn't give up. I didn't really give up. And I remember there's a blog post on that blog, which still lives. And it said, I'm just trying to find myself, and I don't know what to do with myself, with my life. But I think I want to be a life coach. And that, I remember the date of that post, and it was July 1st, 2015. And years later, I did it. But it just goes to show that, I guess the message behind this is just never give up, and believing in yourself, and not letting what other people think of you or say of you, like, give it power. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's such a beautiful, inspiring story. And I think that's especially inspiring for people who are struggling with mental illness. Their mental illness doesn't have to define them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And for a while, like I just, like I said, it crippled me. And a lot of people told me, like now, for example, when in the process of actually writing a chapter for a book that I participated in called Gladversity, the author to the book of the main author, I remember she told me a word, and I love the word that she used, was kryptonite. Like, it just felt like it was my kryptonite at first, because it weakened me. Mm-hmm. It just felt like bipolar disorder kind of weakened me. And once I came around it, and once I saw that, you know what, it doesn't have to be my weakness. It doesn't have to be something that is going to be, that I'm always going to have to be, even though I may struggle with it at sometimes, I can see these things as my strengths. Mm-hmm. And I saw the beauty of it.
Yeah, I think it's a really nice story to sort of highlight how important it is, the way that you sort of interpret whatever blessings or whatever things you're given in life, right? Because from the way that you sort of told it, is like, in the beginning, you had bipolar to deal with, plus everyone around you sort of treating you with that top of mind, right? Sort of like acting around your bipolar. And when you're 16 or 17 or whatever else, if you don't have the tools or support, it's extremely hard to find yourself anywhere but what you said, right? Which is just like really wrapped up in sort of that experience as part of your identity. But and I'd be curious to hear a little bit more about this, but it also sounded like, you sort of were able to find writing as sort of a way to expand that identity, right? Like build up a skill that gave you enough, I don't want to speak for you, but like confidence or something else, enough of something to sort of like strive towards and work on to see yourself as more than just this diagnosis. So I'd be curious, in the same sort of vein, like, is that the sort of path that you see other people typically need help with, or are there other things that if someone comes to you and needs help with, I don't know if you focus on bipolar or if you work with a bunch of different types of things, but what sort of like common pathways or things you see that people typically need help with earlier in their path?
I think that well, I work with mostly people with mental health illnesses, but my focus, I think, is bipolar disorder, just because I went through that and I know it more. But I think that it's stepping out of their comfort zone and because it's scary, because it's the unknown, and it's just, what is this illness going to do to me? What is this? Is it going to take control of my mind? Are people going to think I'm different? And there's these other questions out there, is this medication am I going to depend on it forever if I take medication? There's all these like unknowns. And that was kind of what my fears were there. So when people come to me, that's kind of usually they're, a lot of the people that I work with are usually recently diagnosed. Mm-hmm. So they're kind of just, what's going on here? Where versus other people that have been diagnosed later in life, or just they have been longer diagnosed, and they understand it a little bit more, but they just haven't gotten the treatment for it and are just still kind of like getting around to it. So
on a similar note, or just like honing in on one of the things you mentioned, this medication piece, like I'd be curious to hear you expand a little bit more on that, because I know that's a very common fear for all sorts of mental illnesses, which is like, I have this anxiety, so now I take these pills, or I have bipolar, and I take these. And a lot of people don't want to be relying on them forever. So I'd be curious, sort of either your experience or just sort of what you've seen in that realm, or how you think about it.
Well, I mean, I'm not a doctor to say, take this or that or whatever, or don't take medication or do. But in my own experience, I feel like for me, it works. And because I feel like I can be a mom, that was my thing. When I became a parent, I had the choice of either be there present with my children, or and be able to parent them, or be without medication, not be able to parent my children. So I had that choice to make. And for me, that was a life-altering decision right there, and it was no choice for me. So for me, it was just a no-brainer. But a lot of people are just scared because of the side effects that these medications can cause. Like I said earlier, like in high school, I was numb, like mentally, emotionally. Like I wasn't just the person I used to be. Like the things that I would normally do, I just wasn't present. If you can, I don't know. I was falling asleep. I was gaining weight. I was breaking out. And, for a teenager, these things are just not what you want for high school, and et cetera.
Yeah, that would make sense. I think you just explained it really beautifully, in that it's everyone's like choice to decide what's best for them, and there shouldn't be judgment on whether a person decides to take medication or not take the medication. And I really appreciate that, you've been through quite the journey, and so to kind of have that experience and have someone come to you who's newly diagnosed to be like, I don't even know where to start, or how do I come to terms with this, or how do I deal with the judgment and the bullying. I think that's so essential. Like, my question for you is like, anything, was there anything else that, aside from fear, that they really need support from you in?
Well, I work with them on like confidence building, and basically also understanding side effects and things like medication. Also working on their acceptance, not only because a lot of individuals like myself that have mental health diagnosis they have, I guess, sometimes lower self-esteem, or they have self-induced, what is this called? Self-induced negative thoughts and things like that we also work on. And we work on a lot of things like communication building and learning to advocate for themselves, etc.
So typically we try to find like some practical takeaways. So I'd be curious, like if I come to you, right, and I'm like, and this is not luckily not recent, but a position I've been in before. So it's like I come to you and I say, you know what, I wake up and I hate myself. Like I hate myself. What is maybe like an exercise or practice or something that maybe you work on or advocate people to work on to sort of start chipping away at some of this?
Right. I would ask them, what is the reason? Like I would basically ask them, like, why do you believe you hate yourself? Like, and try to just dig deeper, because there's obviously a reason there for them to feel this way. So there must be a reason why they're feeling this way. So I would try to ask them, what's making you feel this way? And have them list or write down the reason. So I would ask you, for example, and try to just go from there.
Yeah, that makes sense. I would continue playing along with this, but it's been so long since I actually felt that way that I can't run back. Thank God, I can't run back far enough to actually remember the underlying reasons. But that makes sense to me, where you kind of start digging deeper, and I think it's important that you mentioned like write it out, because I feel like once you start sort of writing these things out, you can unpack them in a way that is a little bit more tangible, or at least from my personal experience, right? In the past, trying to just think some of these things out has been far less effective than actually sitting down and writing it out.
Yeah.
I'd be curious, if someone, instead of someone being like, I hate myself, they came to you and were like, oh, I just don't even know who I am or what I'm supposed to be doing. And I don't want this mental illness to define me, but I just don't know who I am. What do I do?
Well, in that perspective, like, are we talking about career? Are we talking about like what in what way? So that would be my next question. Like, in what way do you feel this way? So like if it's career, for example, I would ask them, what is something that if you didn't get paid to do all day long, you would be happy doing?
It sounds like there's sort of a common theme around sort of breaking up some of the like black and white thinking, or at least the questions we've posed are like that, and sort of like expanding out into kind of like what we talked about in your story, where you felt like you were sort of defined by this one thing, but then was able to find something else to sort of hone in on and sort of expand what you were looking at. It sounds like questions or sort of like thought exercises or writing or things like around that can help people sort of break out or start breaking out from this idea that they're defined by this one specific part of their journey.
Yes. And a lot of the times, like, for example, with what you said there, like about like hating yourself or whatever, it was like that's in the self-induced negative thought. And to be able to actually break that down, you have to understand the root of that. So, just basically that's why it's a lot of open-ended questions, and I can't give you the answers. So it's like I have to go and dig deeper.
So do you find when you start doing some of these like exploratory questions that people tend to dig up sort of answers for themselves, or do they like, usually is it enough, once you start digging a layer or two to say like, oh, now I kind of have an idea of what I need to do? Or do you find that like people need extra resources or something, like they hit roadblocks?
I think it depends on the person, I believe, because some people, sometimes you have to build more rapport with them in order to get them comfortable to open up, versus other people are just willing to just share. So it depends on the person. We're all different. So
it reminds me of all the people that I hear say stuff like, oh, I don't want to go to, I mean, I know this isn't, you're not a therapist, but people say like, oh, I don't want to go to therapy because I know how to trick the therapist. And it's like, well, what if you just don't do that? What if you just actually open up and talk to them? Yeah. What a strange thing. Thank God.
Yeah. And I mean, like with therapy, like I've done therapy myself, and I enjoy it because it's very, very, it's helpful with like past traumas and helping you figure out the past and healing, versus what I do, for example, is helping you find, like with goal setting and your present and also your future. So.
Yeah. So as a coach, you're supporting people in kind of like creating the life that they want to create, not doing like the deep psychological evaluation of their past, obviously.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I think that's just as important to look at too, for them to feel purposeful or to feel like they're moving towards discovering themselves in a deeper level.
Yes. And one thing too is that in order for me to like be able to help someone, I would have had like to be a coach, a mental health coach, like I would have had to gone through what they have, not necessarily exactly what they have gone through, but something similar, you know, because it's an accountability partner. So to be shoulder to shoulder, you know, I am not better, I'm not less, I am shoulder to shoulder, basically. So that's very helpful.
Yeah, I think that's so important too. I mean, it's important to have like the expert support, but there's something about like, you know, not all therapists have had bipolar. So like to talk to someone who's a peer who gets it on like that deeper level and understands like the struggles that you go through with that, and kind of to be able to share your stories on how you coped with it, and like overcame it and like became stronger on the other side of, and not let it like define, like, yeah, it's part of, you have bipolar, but it's not all who you are, essentially.
Yes, exactly. But I think they're both helpful.
Right.
So yeah. And in conjunction, yeah.
Great. Well, was there any other talking points or anything else that you feel like would be helpful for our audience who might be struggling with their identity or with mental illness?
Well, I think that we tend to just identify with not just mental health. You know, I think that any role in life, like for example, divorce or any job that we can relate to or anything, you know, I think that if we get too attached, sometimes it may rub on to us too much, you know. And I think that sometimes we have to value ourselves more, and we have to put ourselves first. And, you know, like they say, the airplane quote, you know, we have to put our mask on first before we help others, you know, and take care of ourselves, because it's very important.
Totally agree with that.
Yeah. And just on a similar note, you know, you see for things like career or things like that, people get so wrapped up in their career and then end up losing that job. And obviously it's a different example, but the way it relates to identity can be sort of the same. And then they absolutely just sort of crumble when that piece of their identity isn't in the place that they expect it to be. I feel like it's useful just in general, you know, to do some of this work around recognizing that identity is like a much larger, broader thing than any one specific activity that you happen to be in, or in this case, where we're talking about specific part of your brain structure or whatever else. There's all these different aspects and facets, and just getting locked into one piece is not necessarily a good recipe for resilience or feeling good.
Yes, I agree. And I mean, it's just getting back up and just getting yourself back out there and fighting back, basically, you know, and being, you know, just being resilient, like you said, because if you don't get back up, you know, it's like they say, there's only one way back, and it's up. So once you fall.
Yeah, there's only one way to go after you fall and hit rock bottom.
It's up.
Great. Well, thank you again for joining us on our show. Is there anything you'd like to plug before we wrap up for today?
Well, I'm actually writing a book on identity crisis, and it talks about divorce. It talks about job loss, miscarriage. So it talks about a lot of different things that, you know, can deal with, like, you basically feeling like you've lost yourself and trying to find yourself.
Yeah. Oh, well, that sounds like an amazing book. I actually just had a miscarriage this year, so that was a very deeply personal, and I shared my story recently, but yeah, that's I feel the heartstrings pulling. So yeah, I hope people check out the book. So we'll put links in the description on where they can like find you and learn more about you if they're interested.
Thank you so much.
Of course. Yeah. Well, thank you. And thank you everyone for tuning in this week. We appreciate you. And if you appreciate us, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and spread the happiness in the world. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please take a second to subscribe, as it really helps out a lot. If you're looking for more content, there's all sorts of information over at howtohappy.com. And if you want something a little bit more condensed and concise, I've also written the book Mindscaping, which is essentially a framework for optimizing happiness. So we'll have the link there as well. And that's all I've got. Thanks again. I'll see you next time.